County Public Safety Committee. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, please be seated. We'll move on to public comment. Do we have anybody registered for public comment? Okay, and with that, then we can move on to item 4. This is a motion to approve the April 10th, 2024 Public Safety Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion? Motion by Wilhelm. Second by Sandelsky. All those in favor? Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask that we move item 7A, which is Sheriff Awards to staff and community members, up to the agenda, just because of some time constraints. So with that, Chief?
Thank you.
Sheriff, rather.
Oh, you're
Sorry.
good. You're good. It used to be when you were on the board last time and I was in this role, I was
Like the good old days.
But so with that, I would like to please invite Morgan Brewer up. If you could please join us up here. Hi, Morgan. You're supposed to be at work, aren't you? Well, I know. That's what I was going to tell you. You're good because I know a couple of them. Professionally, I'm like, hey, is Morgan here? And they're like, no, she's still at work. But so they beat you here, so clearly there's different rules, right? Okay, well, there are by us too, so I get it. The reason we're here today, Morgan, is to recognize you for something that you did, something that most people don't do. The sheriff's office occasionally gives out awards to civilians, but it doesn't happen very often. I can think of in my career at the sheriff's office, maybe 3 times where they've been brought to our attention and we know about it. And I've been with the sheriff's office for almost 25 years now. So to us, this is a big deal. And when a lieutenant with our office, this is Lieutenant Michael Van Offren, reaches out to me and says, hey, there's something that happened that is pretty spectacular and that most people don't do, we take note of it. And I wanted to recognize you for that here today. So on March 23rd, were you headed to work at about 6:12 in the morning, and you were in the town of Hamburg when you noticed smoke coming from the roof of a house. And although we have had people call and say, hey, I think there's a fire at a house, whatever, typically what they do is they keep going. They let us know, and then we call the proper agencies to go and respond to that. But you didn't. What you did was you stopped, you went up to a home in the early morning hours, and you started beating on a door and trying to wake up the person in the home, which in this day and age, in and of itself, can be kind of a dangerous thing to do, kind of an intimidating thing to do and kind of a scary thing to do. But you didn't hesitate, and you ensured and made sure that the homeowner was made aware of the fact that their home might be on fire and took the extra step to ensure that no one else was in the residence. The entire time you stayed on the line with us at the sheriff's office in order to make sure that we knew every step of what was going on and the play-by-play for us so that we could send the right agencies, the right staff to make sure that we took care of that and saved the homeowner's property and then, most importantly, the homeowner's life. If it wasn't for you and if you wouldn't have taken that extra step to go beat on that door, we don't know what would have happened. It sounds to me from I read the call that the house was completely filled with smoke and that there was a significant risk to the homeowner. So for that, I want to recognize you here today with an award that the Sheriff's Office calls the Civilian Community Service Award. And we present this to an individual for their assistance in a singular event or an ongoing project which aids the Sheriff's Office in accomplishing our mission. And one of the key components of our mission is the preservation of life and the safety of our community. So with that, Morgan, I would like to present you with this. Oops, this is the Sheriff's Commendation. Thought I had those organized. Present you with the Sheriff's Civilian Community Service Award. Congratulations and thank you for doing what you did. For for this next award, we're bringing in two of our staff, and one of them has got more legs than the other. And I've asked Deputy Hessel to bring in his partner, Ace. So Ace is one of the now 5 police canines, and we have a therapy dog that's currently off at training that the sheriff's office has on our team. And I want to share with you a little bit about what Deputy Hessel and Canine Ace did on January 19th of this year. Once again, this is a nomination by Lieutenant Van Offeren for the work of Deputy Hessel. But on that day, our sheriff's office received a radio call that dispatchers and police officers never want to hear, and that was a call of an officer who'd been injured. It did make the news, and if you recall, a Mosinee police officer was checking on a person that was believed to be incapacitated, laying on a sidewalk in the city of Mosinee. When the officer approached that individual in order to check on their welfare, the officer was stabbed. He was actually stabbed in the back of the leg and was bleeding significantly. Deputy Hessel was one of the first to arrive on scene, and through incredible work, I've read the reports and I've reviewed a lot of what happened that night. What Deputy Hessel did was he showed incredible leadership and determination in what he did. Not only did he stabilize the scene, he provided medical aid to the officer, applying a tourniquet, controlling the bleeding, getting him loaded in a car, but then continued on because, as you can imagine, late at night in a smaller community, it's hard to get police officers there quickly. He continued to deal with the threat, which was the man with the knife. When the man would not comply with the knife, he deployed his canine Ace, who helped in the apprehension and brought the situation to a more peaceful resolution than may have otherwise been available to us. So for that, Deputy Hessel, and your incredible work that night and all you did to help the Mosinee officer, as well as safely apprehend the suspect, I want to present you with this Sheriff's Commendation for all you did. Congratulations, Charlie. I got your reward, Charlie. Nice. Nice job. Thanks, Ace. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I think you're up next. Bill's gonna.
Okay, we will move on then to item 5A, policy issues, discussion and potential committee determination. Item A, resolution to amend the budget to accept dive team equipment grant through the Aligned Law Enforcement Response Team Alert Program. We do have the resolution within your packet, and that resolution is pretty self-explanatory, but I'll defer to the administrator for anything he'd like to add.
The chief deputy is actually going to take any questions you might have, but this is a fairly common thing that each of our standing committees see as required by state law. If the budget is amended, and that means if we're taking in more funds or expending more funds than was adopted as part of your annual budget, we need a budget amendment. That is what the chair has referred to in your packet. There's a resolution to support that, and this is an occasion in which the sheriff's office has been awarded, and should the county accept, we would have funds to procure some equipment for purposes of the dive team. So with that, I'll kick it over to Chief Deputy Milhausen.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We've got Lieutenant Mark Wagers. He's the commander overseeing the dive team, so he can speak, if we need to, a little more in depth as to exactly the long journey that I know numerous times he's tried to get this grant in order to get this piece of equipment. I was on the dive team with Mark for several years. Back in 2006, we got a piece of equipment that was a sonar that allowed us to do our jobs much better and much faster. This ROV, or remote operated vehicle, is going to, once again, it's another step. It's going to allow us to reduce our manpower hours It's going to increase the safety of the dive team members when they're diving. It can be deployed in swift water. It can be deployed in a lot of situations where we wouldn't put a diver down. And being a part of Alert, one of the regions we cover, is it 6 counties, Mark? I think 6.
6 counties and central part of the state and then north, so.
So about 6 counties, and with that, they've identified Marathon County, our dive team. They do an amazing job. They're recognized not only in Wisconsin, but in the Midwest as one of the best of the best. And this piece of equipment is just going to enhance that. It's something that there's no way within our budget we could ever come up with the money, to afford. So with that, I guess I'll leave it up to you guys for whatever questions you may have particular to the piece of equipment, how it's going to be used, or anything that you guys have for us. We can certainly bring Mark up if need be to answer your questions.
Do we have any questions from the committee members?
In terms of process, Mr. Chair, then, as you alluded to, a motion to recommend amendment of the budget to the HR Finance and Property Committee would be in order, and then this would ultimately go to the full board.
Motion by Opal. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend amendment of the budget to the HR Property and Finance Committee. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we moving. Do we need to make any adjustments? No, based on who's here. Okay.
Judge O'Neill, do you need to go?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, we have no operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy to address today. Item 7A we have covered. Move on to item 7B, review standing committee related ordinances under section 2.04, including mission, duties, responsibilities, and jurisdiction. That was also included within the packet, but I'll defer to the administrator to elaborate on those items.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's tough to follow a very active dog and information about a dive team, but I'm doing it with the riveting legal portion of this evening, or this afternoon. This is something we start with every time we do a kind of a new term of the board. We look first and foremost to your ordinances as referenced in the original orientation of the full board. Your standing committees are dictated by ordinance. That's one of the things you have control over under the Wisconsin statutes. There's a lot of things we do, right, as county government that we refer to before as, we're an arm of the state. How you are organized, however, you have a great deal of latitude with respect to that. And under 2.04, that is your standing committee section of the county board ordinances. And this committee, of course, is listed within that document, and you are under sub 7. The primary purpose or mission and purpose for each of the standing committees is quite honestly very similar. They focus on implementing the strategic plan, which we'll talk about a bit later when we get into the topics from last session. But again, this committee, you'll hear from each of the department heads that frequently come before you, and I'll discuss a little bit about some of the other organizations that come before you under your jurisdiction, your purview. But it is the implementation of the strategic plan relative to those departments. Just to highlight a couple of things, your committee is a little bit unique in that it has a larger number of elected officer-led departments than other departments. So again, as we referenced in orientation, you have those departments that are led by elected officials. Some of those that you'll hear from today, the sheriff's office, clerk of courts, district attorney's office. And then you have the other kind of battery of departments where I appoint, that is, I hire the department head that runs those departments. My relationship with each is certainly there's a little bit of difference without question, but I really view my role similarly. I work very closely with each of them. I think we have a strong positive relationship to try to accomplish their goals and those of certainly administration and the board. I won't go through the duties and responsibilities in detail. When you go through each of the departments, you'll hear a little bit about how they're organized, and we'll use the budget the budget document as the way to kind of walk through that. But I did want to take a moment to highlight some of the other organizations that you'll hear from frequently, one of which is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and I think Judge O'Neill might be able to talk to that in her comments. But you also, as part of last year's budget, and I foresee doing the same thing this year, this committee has a close relationship, or at least has an interest in understanding how the funding allocated through the budget for North Central Community Action Program, as well as the mediation program, how those are working. So you will likely hear from each of those entities throughout the budget process, and you may get an annual update. I neglected one. Also, the women's community receives funding through the county's annual budget process. So you'll likely hear from those organizations as well. But succinctly put, your section of Chapter 2.04 really lays out from the perspective of the county board. Again, you organize yourselves. You have administrative home rule. What you should be focusing on. A lot of it is in general terms, but that ordinance is a good place to start. And with that, I don't have anything other than if there are questions relative to the ordinance, I can try to answer them. Otherwise, my thought was, Mr. Chair, we could move on to the individual reports that are referenced in the agenda, and then lastly, move on to the topics from last term, including the strategic plan. I can provide a bit of an overview there before talking about what you want to accomplish next term.
Okay, sounds good. Any questions for Lance? Okay, we can move on to that then.
All right, I think first on your list was the sheriff's office.
All right. Well, hello again. The Sheriff's Office is the largest county department here in Marathon County. We have about 200 employees. 194 of them are considered the full-time equivalents, or the FTEs. The remainder of those are part-time employees who primarily work in court security. You'll see some of them out here as reserve deputies. There are some reserve deputies that work within our patrol division. They work fairs and festivals and other big events. And then we also have staff that help us do prisoner transports all over the state and nation, for that matter, when needed. The bulk of the staff that we have, or our largest group of staff, are actually within the jail. That is our largest division, and that is because of just the operations of a jail and the design of the jail that we have. We are a linear jail, which is an old-style jail, not like many of the modern ones you will see. So as we talk about challenges in the jail, you'll oftentimes hear us talk about the linear design of the facility. I can drive a little bit there, sure. The 5 divisions we have are the administrative division, which manages all of our public records. They largely deal with the budget, and then any of the ancillary duties that we have, like managing our training and some of those things. That is led by a captain. His name is Ryan Weber, and then he has other leadership underneath him. He is also responsible for our fleet and the management of every one of our vehicles. We have about 100 vehicles in our fleet when you figure all of the SWAT vehicles, bomb, dive, those type of assets, but also the patrol vehicles that you see sitting out here in the parking lot. He's also responsible for computer support. So as you can imagine, with that many staff and those divisions and the jail and the 911 center, we have a lot of technology within the sheriff's office. He manages that, and he also manages courthouse security. The jail, we do have the main jail here, which is pretty self-explanatory, but we also have a secure detention center where we hold juvenile offenders. We'll talk a little bit more about that here as we talk about some of our highlights and how we run that business out there. Our 911 center is responsible for all of the communications for every police and fire entity in the county, and ambulance for that matter. I believe all totaled, we dispatch for close to 80 different agencies in Marathon County. The investigations division is where all of our detectives work out of. Within the investigations division, we also have civil process, warrant and ID. There's a forensic lab here where we examine computers. It's a regional forensic lab. And there are other agencies that are a part of that: Langley County, Portage County, Antigo Police Department, a number of Marathon County agencies, and a couple police agencies in other counties. So they all pay to be a part of that and help offset the costs of running that lab. Also within the investigations division, we have the North Central Wisconsin's Narcotics Task Force, which is a federal task force. There's actually an FBI agent that works out of the courthouse here, assigned to our task force. So many of the cases that they work are the ones that when you see them in the news or hear about them, those are those very large-scale cases that we have. And then our patrol division is the one that you see most readily out in the community, the ones that you typically hear about the most. And that's made up of 36 road deputies. And then we have deputies assigned to the village of Rib Mountain. We currently have 2 assigned there, with a 3rd being added in October. And then one of our deputies is currently assigned over to the Wausau Police Department, working in the Crisis Assessment Response Team, which is a partnership with us in the city of Wausau over dealing with crisis response in the community and minimizing the number of emergency detentions we have and de-escalating people who are in crisis. We could probably have a presentation just on that and the success of that when we talk about where we used to be with the number of detentions we had relative to the number of crisis calls we had, and how we have way more crisis calls now, and the number of detentions that we are doing are nearly cut in half. And number one, that's the right thing to do for people, but the second big reason that that's important is those detentions are incredibly expensive, costing upwards of $1,500 a day. So it's really important that we continue that partnership and that work. Now, as we look at the highlights that we had in 2023, and some are carrying over to today, the number one up there you'll see in the budget book is the jail food service. We've had a number of iterations of how we receive food for our inmates. We found that to be more difficult coming out of the pandemic. So what we did recently is we did a renovation to the jail kitchen. It's supposed to be done at the end of this week, which means that on Saturday they're moving in the food service provider, and we will be, for the first time since 1988, self-sufficient in providing food to our inmates out of our own facility, which is a big deal. It helps us control costs, and it also helps ensure that the quality of the food that we're giving our inmates is where it needs to be. We recently implemented a new communication platform for our inmates. Why that's important to you is that is a significant revenue source for us that helps offset our operating and our levy. It helps keep costs down. So it's important that we stay on top of that contract and work with our vendor, at the same time balancing the needs of our inmates and the families that need to contact our inmates. The arrangement we have now is significantly better for the families that we serve than it had been in the past. The costs to the consumer are way down, while we still are able to keep our revenues where we need to have them. We recently expanded medically assisted treatment in the jail, which means that inmates that come in and need to be continued on medications to help them with their substance abuse, we're able to do that under a grant. Our jail social worker does much of that work. And then the one that I want to touch on here briefly is in 2013, we had made an effort starting in January is when we proposed it, and in April we got it off the ground, and that is changing the delivery of services at our secure detention center. The revenues at the secure detention center pre-2023 were in that $200,000 to $300,000 a year range, which didn't cover our costs. We are now at a point where last year I believe that the revenues were somewhere in that $1 to $1.2 million range, and we were able to cover our costs and make sure that whatever the services we're delivering are being done in a way that is positive to our tax levy, so that our levy remains low. I checked with Chief Deputy Milhausen this morning, and we are doing very well this year. And that is, business is continuing to function as it did last year, and we are not seeing a change at all in how that's happening. One thing that is new to us, and it's continuing into 2024, is the enterprise lease program. The majority of our fleet is currently county-owned, but we are slowly moving that over to Enterprise Rent-A-Car. It's a government program where they leverage our government purchasing power with their program, and then they all help us offset costs and spread those costs out over a longer period of time, and then use the value we have, the residual value in vehicles, and get rid of them at the right time when we can still get something for them. Our cars were run to 200,000 miles, and as you can imagine, we don't get a whole lot for a car that's been in police use with 200,000 miles. The big challenges we're going to have in 2024 and what we're working on is really recruitment and retention. If you see it everywhere in the news, it's getting harder and harder to hire police officers. When I was hired, I competed with 300 people. If we have 6 to 10 applications at any given time for deputy sheriff, that's good. We're working on changing that, and it's no different than anywhere else. We were having significant staffing challenges in the jail. We currently have 10 corrections officers currently in the jail academy out at NTC. When they get back to us, that's going to cut our current staffing deficit down to about 5 to 6 staff, which is far better than the 15 plus we'd been experiencing. By doing that, we're going to be able to bring more of our inmates back. Our inmate population in the jail has significantly stabilized. In 2019, our peak population was 431. We were housing out about 130 to 140 inmates on any given day. I checked the numbers today. We have 57 inmates out today, total. We have 190 in our facility. If we were fully staffed, and that'll be happening here in the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to bring a number of those inmates back. And I anticipate that if we were fully staffed today, and we were in a good place, we would probably only have out between 15 and 20 max. So that is a significant cost savings to the county if we can get that reversed. And then you see on there the evaluation of the secure detention center, which is what we continually do every month. We're doing really well there. And that radio service maintenance contract, that was a big point of topic last year, has been taken care of. We're under a new contract with our vendor, and things are going very well. So that's a really high-level overview of what we've been working on and who we are at the Sheriff's Office. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
What are your projections for the youth detention center, like what it would bring in for the year? Is that 1.2 million?
Yeah,
Or
right now, after talking with Chief Deputy Milhausen this morning, I believe that the lowest month we've had so far this year is about $111,000 in revenue. There was one month that was significantly more than that. So as long as we stay on course, we're going to be targeted at that 1.2 or higher level. So we've actually been able to get additional partners, people who have signed contracts with us, which is helping in that. And then there are still some people that elect to pay the higher rate. If that were ever to change, that number could maybe tip back a little bit, but at the end of the day, we know we're guaranteed those folks. Right, our operating still comes out of that, but it offsets that operating, and then there's some. So,
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
right, thank you.
All right, I think next up is Kelly from the Clerk of Courts. We'll find. Yeah, I'm wondering if it's.
All right. I am Kelly Schremp. I'm the elected clerk of courts here in Marathon County. You might be kind of surprised to hear that we have 33 employees in the clerk of courts office that include myself, a full-time court commissioner, and a part-time court commissioner who will become full-time this fall. That does not include, we have 12 casual bailiff positions that help out with jury trials whenever we have jury trials scheduled. So we have a pretty large office, and we also have 6 judges now. And if you're not aware, the clerk of courts office maintains records of all the documents filed within the courts. We keep a record of court proceedings and collect various fees, fines, and forfeitures that are ordered by the court or specified by statute. And we are also responsible for the management of the jury process here in Marathon County. One of the things that we like to talk about the most, I think, in our budget message is the fact that since 2017, we started sending our uncollectible debt to the state debt collection agency at the Department of Revenue. And at the time that this budget message was put together, we had collected over $9 million in uncollectible fines. And just as of yesterday, I think it was, I was told that we still have $6 million with the State Debt Collection Agency. So that's a huge amount of money. So that just goes to show you how many people don't pay their fines. And they are very uncollectible. We do work with people every day to get payment arrangements for their fines so that they can get them paid on time, but there is just a lot of it out there that we still need to work on. A year or two ago, we had, all of our courtrooms were upgraded with audio visual technology, and I think the judges that are sitting in the back can probably attest to the fact that that has been a huge endeavor and has been really helpful. Each courtroom that you go into now has this, everybody has the same equipment, so everybody knows how to use it. If you have to switch courtrooms around, you know how to use the equipment in each courtroom. We have a lot of hearings where people are by Zoom video. That's helped with the audio part of that. We've been able to have more court hearings that way by video rather than in person, so that's helped a lot too, especially when you need to have interpreters. We used to pay a lot of money out of our budget for interpreters to drive here for each of the hearings they needed to be here for. Now we're able to do that by video, and we save a lot of money on travel expenses with the interpreters. So I think those were the biggest topics we had in our budget message this year. I can't really think of anything else.
Nope, I'll just, so Kelly alluded to the courtroom audio video. That was something that the county board funded through the use of the American Rescue Plan Act funds. It was about $630,000 in total to outfit, I think it was six
Courtrooms and 2 hearing rooms we have.
Yeah, and I think one of the hearings rooms might have been originally outfitted with other funds, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's a considerable amount of money. The only other thing I would add is that it also has, it's not only a benefit for the clerk of court's office budget to limit transports relative to interpreters, it also is a positive on the sheriff's office side that they don't need to go and travel to pick up as many defendants who are perhaps in custody in other areas. So all around a sound investment. I think it's certainly not unusual. Every county in Wisconsin at the time was having conversations about how to update courtroom audio-visual systems, but Marathon County made that investment at that point.
Yeah, and I think we're way ahead of a lot of counties within the state. When I talk to other clerks of court, they're kind of shocked at the technology we have in our courtrooms, so we're pretty lucky with that. One thing I'll just end with then, we do have 12 casual bailiffs that help out with jury trials, but we're always looking for more. If anyone knows of anybody that would like to be a bailiff, have them contact me and we can set them up with a tour of a jury trial.
And I neglected to mention this before, but we are using the budget book as the way to walk through each department, and each of the departments are organized in that budget message in a similar way as to kind of what Kelly alluded to. You'll talk a little bit about, what their mission is, what they do, and then the next several pages are how they're organized. So you'll see the org charts for each of the departments, and then as the sheriff referenced, accomplishments from last year, or accomplishments from the calendar year in which the budget was prepared, and then things to look forward to next year.
All right.
Any questions for the clerk?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Teresa, you are up. District Attorney Whetstone is next on your list.
My name's Krista Bucket, and I'm a PowerPoint.
Oh, yeah, you can put it in there, and here, let's get you set up, and then, yeah, you can pop it in there, we'll just need to get it to Pat.
Oh, okay. I was just doing.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. Okay. For the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody should have taught me how to make a PowerPoint, because now I do it all the time, which I never used to. Uh-oh, do I have to sign in or something? Do I have to do something with that? I don't know if I can do it. Nope, can't do that. Nope, can't do that. Yay. All right. Should have had you come up here with me, Ruth. Wasting time. All right, well, hopefully this won't advance without me. So my name is Teresa Whetstone. I'm the district attorney in Marathon County. I was elected in 2016. I have also been a prosecutor with Marathon County since 2002. So I've represented the DA's office in multiple capacities, as a frontline prosecutor and then as a deputy district attorney. I think I started that in 2006 and then elected. We have 13 prosecutors in our office. So with the 6 branches of court, we have 2 prosecutors assigned to each branch, and one handles sensitive crimes in that branch, and the other handles OWI prosecutions as well as drug trafficking. We have about 37 employees in our office, and by statute, the district attorney's office is charged with prosecuting all criminal actions in Marathon County, state forfeitures, and juvenile delinquencies. So for those of you who don't know, this is sort of a visual of how referrals come into our office. It used to be 16 police departments, but now it's 15 police departments with the merger of Rothschild and Everest Metro. So these referrals come in from all the law enforcement agencies in the county, obviously a very large county, resulting in, last year it was 4,237 referrals, and those are distributed to our prosecutors. The way in which prosecution files come to our office has changed significantly since I started here. Obviously, as you see along the top, all the different forms of media that now come into our office, it's overwhelming, frankly. Gone are the days of the 1-paragraph disorderly conduct report. You're going to have 2 officers responding, and they're going to have body cams, maybe squad cams, cell phone downloads, you name it. We're responsible to know what's on those, and we're responsible to process those and provide those to defense counsel. One of the things that I am very proud of before the pandemic, luckily, we became a paperless office. We now are taking 10 days on average to from referral to charging of our felony cases, and 18 days for misdemeanor cases. So that is, I think, a great turnaround time. Our employee expectations are 30 days to take action on a file. So we do keep track of this to ensure that we're meeting that target, because obviously that's really important for victims. It's important for offenders to get those cases, action taken on those cases. The time from filing to disposition has been increasing. So those cases are getting entered into the system at that rate, but then for misdemeanor cases, it's taking an average 471 days, and for felony cases, 578 days. That's from going through the court system. A few things. A lot of what we do in the district attorney's office is statutorily required. One of the requirements is compliance with victims' rights. There are both statutory requirements and constitutional requirements. Many of you are familiar with Marsy's Law that passed in May of 2020. Just to give some idea, we sent notification out to 1,550 victims last year. Obviously, not all of our cases have victims, but we have 3 victim witness specialists, one of whom is funded by ARPA funds right now and will sunset at the end of the year. And our coordinator, and they're responsible. Victims can opt in at any point in time during the proceeding. And so they're responsible to ensure that we comply with the constitutional and statutory requirements. They do have a mechanism for grievance if we do not And obviously, that's what we want to do, to provide services with dignity, respect, courtesy, and sensitivity. It's interesting to note that victims' rights are to be protected by prosecutors in a manner no less vigorous than the protections afforded criminal defendants. So we have a lot of things that are mandatory in our office, but one of the things that's not mandatory is our choice to engage in diversion programs. So as a prosecutor, I got to tell you that when this first came about, this concept of diversion, it was pretty scary to me, because you're talking about an alternative method of handling criminal referrals. And the prosecutor, especially the elected, is responsible for doing our best to ensure public safety, right? Minimize harm, ensure public safety. And these alternative methods have to be closely monitored, in my opinion. We have several that we have taken on in our office, and it is a lot of work. We have a diversion staff who is quite amazing. So we have these assignments of tasks. So we have individuals, our deflection specialist and our investigator, working on deflection, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then we have pre-arrest diversion, pre-charge diversion, post-charge diversion, and then what I'll call prison diversion. So pre-charge diversion, on average, we have 293 referrals. There are currently 219 active open cases. We have about 73% of the participants that sign the agreement successfully complete the program. So, like I said, one of the things that we want to make sure is that we're minimizing harm and increasing public safety. So we watch the recidivism rate, and that is about 16%, which is lower than the national average, at least for that risk of offender. So goals of this are obviously to have an effective intervention that lessens prosecutor caseload, saves court time, and reduces recidivism. For every successful completion, and they don't come back into the system with a new crime, that is a case that the courts never see or have to deal with. So obviously that's in everyone's interest. So next we have deferred entry of judgment, which is the next step up, I guess I would say. Those are for people who, there needs to be a criminal consequence, but not necessarily a felony conviction for that individual. There are a lot of benefits to doing post-charge diversion. One of them is obviously for the offender to avoid the felony conviction, but also for victims. We try to collect restitution in a way that the offender is incentivized through the deferred entry of judgment. We've collected in that program over $976,000 in restitution through that process. There are 401 active cases in post-charge diversion. And that, again, we track that recidivism rate, and it's about at 18%. Now we have the deflection initiative, which is very new to our office since October. It's actually run through the sheriff's office, but we're the persons facilitating that in the DA's office. It's one of very few sites throughout the state. It's a new concept. It is grant funded. This is a little bit about what it is. It's a lot more complicated than I can probably do justice to in this short presentation. But in essence, it's an intervention with law enforcement, primarily law enforcement referral, but other sources can refer as well. But it's for people who are struggling with mental health and substance use disorders, and we don't even open the file in our office. We get the referral, and we try to connect that person with appropriate services at that point in time before we open the case. There's a team of people reviewing that. It's really to deal with people in crisis from those issues. So since October, we have 51 referrals. That number is probably higher now. different sources. The Drug Task Force, as the sheriff mentioned, is giving us referrals. We've already had 9 successful completions, and that's the number of people who have successfully completed 90 days with the deflection specialist or are able to manage their alcohol or substance use disorder on an outpatient basis. So that's really the goal, is transitioning to sober living and getting that substance misuse under control. I want to point out the high utilizers, because those are individuals. One individual can have multiple contacts with the criminal justice system and create case after case after case after case. We're attempting to work with some of those populations in order to get a meaningful intervention and connection with resources. When I say that, I mean our deflection specialist may drive 5 hours to take someone to treatment, if that's where the treatment place is that's open. So it is a warm handoff. It is case management, and so we're working with that high utilizer population and the unhoused population. As everyone knows, those are difficult struggles for the criminal justice system. I went on the county website right before this presentation, and it says we have an alcohol court. We do not have an alcohol court. We have an OWI court. It does not serve defendants with, quote, alcohol-related offenses. It serves persons who are charged with OWI. And it actually says the defendant is charged with a felony offense of operating while under the influence of alcohol or drugs in Marathon County. As many of you know, the law changed in 2020, and it requires offenders to serve a bifurcated sentence. Fourth offenders very often don't meet the criteria for that court, so we have 3 participants right now. That is a resource allocation that the district attorney's office does participate in that court, as far as a prosecutor is assigned to that court, at least at this point in time. And then drug treatment court, as you may have heard in a previous presentation or heard of, the DA's office is no longer choosing to have a prosecutor participate in that court. So really a lot of the diversion program, whether it's pre-charge, post-charge, drug treatment court, OWI court, deflection, all of those are non-mandated programs that, as the district attorney, I need to make choices about resource allocation, whether it enhances public safety, whether it reduces harm, and how it impacts victims. So I think that's my responsibility. I take that very seriously. I obviously am invested in alternative methods of dealing with crime in this county, and I think it's important, but I think it's also important that those interventions are managed and that they have the outcomes that we're seeking. So I'm always open to questions about any of those things. That's a lot of information. I probably took a lot more than 5 minutes, sorry.
You want to hit on?
Yeah, can I get out of here?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then your
Oh, yeah, sure. Yes, thanks. So our district attorneys are state-funded positions. Our prosecutors are state-funded positions. We have the 13 state-funded positions, and we also have an ARPA position, which actually we're in the final stages of hiring again, which is great. Hopefully we'll have that position filled again. We are very fortunate to be stable in the DA's office. We've been stable now for some time with our prosecutor staffing, and in our county positions are our legal assistants. We are transitioning to a structure with an attempt to have additional paralegals who can perform higher level work in our office to support the attorneys, in part to deal with large volume of materials, electronic materials, transcripts, those types of things. And then we have a prelim testifier, positions like that support the cases going through court, and those are all county-funded positions.
Any questions for district attorney? Okay. Thank you, Teresa. Okay, and we have Teresa's PowerPoint. We'll get that out to the committee members by follow-up. Okay, well, it'll be in the packet next time. Okay, we can move on then to our circuit court judges.
Yeah, looks like Judge O'Neill is going to speak to this, and it really goes back to, I think, a couple of points before we jump in. I referenced the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council that was initiated during the last term of the county board, formalized through an ordinance. So, sorry to put you on the spot, Judge, if you can talk a little bit about that. Judge O'Neill chairs that work group. And then also just building on what Teresa referenced, when Kelly was talking about the clerk of court's office and their work to support the judges, that's supporting circuit court judges. Marathon County Circuit Court is really a state, it's the state court system operated on a local level. It's a good example of that state and local partnership, which Teresa also referenced under the statutes. The state provides the prosecutors, the county provides the staff. Similarly with the court system, the state provides some funding, very little, which I'll talk about later, but also they provide the judges. And then we provide the staff to run the court system. So take it away, Judge.
So thanks for having me. As Lance mentioned, I am Judge O'Neill. I am privileged to preside in Branch 1 of Marathon County, and I'm here today because I am the chair of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council that Lance has referenced. We also have leadership, however, in our 6 judges. That would be Judge Moran is our presiding judge, who's here as well. But I'm here today to speak mainly because if there is an issue from the judiciary that impacts impacts county funding, it would most likely come through the CJCC, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and then to the Public Safety Committee. So that's why you're having to listen to me. But I am only one of the judges, and as alluded to, I'm state funded, but there are many funds that the circuit courts rely on through the county, such as our staffing, as well as thank you for the audiovisual equipment that the county board was able to fund for us, because it's just a difference of night and day. As you can imagine, during the pandemic, when we had to transition to remote court, it was obviously new to everybody. And at that time, we had really poor audiovisual equipment, and it was very difficult to hold court because we would lose callers. The quality of the connections were very bad. And now we do have one of the state-of-the-art systems, and it's just the difference between night and day. So that is one funding that we do appreciate. With regard to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, though, that I am blessed to chair, there are certain issues that will come before the board. One of the major projects that we worked on last year was to come up with a recommendation as to how to allocate the opioid settlement funds that are awarded to our county. So that is a project that we worked on and collaborated on to come up with a recommendation to the county board. We also work on a number of issues to try, again, really to promote justice through collaboration, in recognition that our goal is to protect public safety. And so some of the initiatives that we've also engaged in is with regard to trying to find solutions to the shortage of criminal defense attorneys in the county, which is leading to exorbitant delays with regard to disposition of cases. We also made recommendations with regard to a data officer, which successfully went through. The county has now funded a data officer to help us collect data to really try to define what is best practice and how to improve our efficiencies. We also have been involved with education through the diversion program, the deflection. We've talked about that, as well as PARI, which is the Police Assisted Addiction and Recovery Initiative that is supported by the Sheriff's Department. So in that council, we really are trying to find ways to improve the efficiency of the court process and really improve outcomes with regard to rehabilitation of criminal offenders so that they don't recidivate, so they don't reoffend, so that our county becomes safer, and that we do so in an efficient in timely manner, so trying to improve the process. So I'm here just to let you know that I'm the judge that's chairs the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, so you might see me at some meeting if I want to make a recommendation to the board. But I guess I'm not here for funding today. Is there anything I can try to explain for you, or any questions that I can answer for you at this point in time? I don't know what you wanted me to. Judge Moran.
An open invitation, if anybody important would like to spend some time and sit with you on the bench, experience what it's like to be on the bench, and get a kind of a view of what's going on, I welcome you to do that. I've had board members in the past that have done that, and I would welcome you to do that if you wanted to spend an afternoon on the bench and see how the system works. So I open that invitation to all of you. All right? Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time, and good luck on your new session.
Thank you. Medical Examiner's Office.
And I don't know, Jess, are you on? Otherwise, if not, I get to play medical.
She is.
Oh. I don't know, somebody was speaking on the call.
Oh, it was just me, sorry. Jean Mask. No, she's not on.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Mask. All right, I will pull up the budget message and we'll jump along. So like many of the other departments and that you've heard from today and all the other departments that we referenced in the orientation, there are certain things that the counties are mandated to do, and Medical Examiner's Office is really one of those, perhaps similar to the left tackle of a football team. You don't know they're there until you really have something go poorly. But the medical examiner is responsible for investigating and determining causes of death in a variety of circumstances where it's legally required. So many of those cases where Jess is involved ultimately lead to the justice system. Not all, but the work of the medical examiner's office is really important as it relates to those pieces that ultimately go through the justice system. Their office is one of our small but mighty departments. You heard from our largest department today, the sheriff's office. Jess's office is really more on the small side. It's Jess with a chief deputy and then just a handful of other staff. In terms of what you've heard from the medical examiner's office, if you haven't already, you'll hear it for certainly early on in this term. There has been a devotion of an inordinate amount of energy toward addressing the lack of forensic autopsy providers in the state of Wisconsin for us to ultimately start what we've referred to as the Regional Forensic Science Center. And that is moving forward. In fact, Deputy Administrator Holman and the team are still working with all the bidders that submitted bids for our construction project to ensure that we come in on budget for that project yet this week. So we do anticipate that this organizational chart that is in the 2024 budget book is going to look fundamentally different than the budget book for 2025 that I proposed to you, because there's going to be a substantial reorganization as we move to what is colloquially referred to as the professional office relative to death investigation. And what that means is it's led by a medical professional, specifically a forensic pathologist. So we'll be transitioning to that in the next several months. Ultimately, the adoption of the 2025 budget will provide the overall architecture for that. But in the meantime, we're doing a lot of work to try to plan for that. The county board, in your first meeting, apart from all the organizational work that you did, you also approved a series of 2 resolutions, one authorizing the creation and recruiting of a forensic pathologist, and the second is for the purchase of land for that Regional Forensic Science Center. So much of the work that Jess has done, at least in terms of presenting to this committee, has really been focused on that project related to the Regional Forensic Science Center. You haven't heard much of the actual work of the medical examiner's office, but If you do have any questions, I can try to answer those, but moving forward, you're going to continue to hear, I would anticipate over the next several months, if nothing else, just updates on how that project is moving forward. We anticipate groundbreaking, for that new facility would be, right now it's looking like June, early June, as we're already into May. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions on the medical examiner's office. Otherwise, if there are none, I would move on to the next section.
Any questions for the administrator? Okay.
This is Supervisor.
Go ahead, Jean.
Thank you. I just wanted to say for the new people on the committee that the task force and Jess did a phenomenal job. And it took a very, very long time. I believe it's over 6 years to get to this point. And with the partnering with NTC, it has made this facility become one of the best facilities we're going to see in the nation. And this committee should be so proud to be part of it because this is a state-of-the-art facility and we are a pioneer. And I really appreciate everything that everyone has done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Mask. Any other questions or comments on the medical examiner's office? Okay, we can move on. The administrator would like to
Sure,
do a
I'll
wrap.
just a wrap up for your next item, kind of leads you into the items for future discussion. Just to recap, you got introduced to the departments and entities that often appear, and a number of them did reference some of the things that they've brought to this committee in the past. I just want to also highlight some of those things because I think it might inform you as you interface with the chair and vice chair of your committee as you formulate ideas for future discussion. But over the last term, one of the things with the state and local partnership for, again, the best example is the district attorney's office. We did bring from this committee to the full board a resolution to urge the state to better fund our court system, prosecutors, judges, and public defender's office. The sheriff referenced some of the presentations he made last year relative to jail staffing challenges. One of your more interesting meetings I think you're going to have is we will perhaps even next month do a jail tour that is required for the committee to actually go on a tour of the facility. You had some budget amendments already in this meeting that will move forward. Those are likely to continue, as are the opioid funding discussions. And as Teresa referenced, there's within the budget message relative to treatment courts, I'm going to be presenting a memo to you. I have to write it yet, but sometime in the middle of the year relative to kind of what does a line of sight look like to potential utilization of those funds. Is there a viable population to serve? So all those things are normal things that you'll see throughout the term. But for your next item, if you do have topics that you'd like to run by me to see if they're under this committee's jurisdiction, certainly run them by the chair, but I'd be happy to assist in any of those discussions.
Okay, thank you, Administrator. So under item 8A, obviously the Administrator commented on much of what we're going to be looking at during the next 2 years. But for purposes of the next meeting, is there any topic right now that anyone would like to see brought forward at the next meeting? Otherwise,
Chair Jacobs?
Yes, Supervisor Mask.
I think that the medical examiner, I've got Morgan in my mind. Emergency management is a very interesting office that we have under our umbrella, and I think that would be a really good one to look at in a future meeting.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Mask. Anyone else? Okay. With that, we will move on. Item B, just a reminder, Tuesday, June 11th at 1:30 p.m. is our next regularly scheduled meeting. With that, we're down to item 9. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Supervisor Opel, second by Supervisor Wilhelm. All those in favor? Aye. Hey, thank you.
Aye.
Get a little sun this weekend, Chad?
did? We were up north planting trees. We planted 300, 200 spruce and balsam. Okay. And then 100 silver maple. Actually, Bill's land, Hudson land.